Hi, K-pop lovers. Welcome back to our channel. Before we get into this, I want you to do something right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because the story I'm about to tell you is one of the most extraordinary things that has ever happened in music history, and I promise you, if you stick until the very end, you're going to hear something about ARMY in 2026 that will genuinely blow your mind. So don't you dare click away. Let's get into it. There is a company in South Korea that, in the year 2007, had exactly 4 employees and was on the verge of going bankrupt. The founder was a music producer named Bang Si-hyuk, a man who had left one of the biggest entertainment agencies in Korea, JYP Entertainment, to chase a different kind of dream. At the time, nobody believed in him. The company was called Big Hit Entertainment, and for years, it existed in the shadow of Korea's Big Three, SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP, the giants that controlled everything in K-pop. Big Hit was tiny. Big Hit was struggling. Big Hit was almost nothing. And then, in 2010, Bang Si-hyuk signed a teenage underground rapper from Seoul named Kim Namjoon, who the world would later come to know as RM, and began assembling a group. One by one, young men joined the project. Jin, who had no singing experience and originally auditioned to be an actor. Yoongi, who came in second at a rap competition Bang Si-hyuk held, and later joked that Bang tricked him into joining a group when he only wanted to be a producer. Hoseok, a dancer who was redirected into rapping. And Jungkook, a kid from Busan who had been scouted by 7 different agencies after appearing on a televised audition show, and who chose Big Hit, the smallest option, over all of them, simply because he was impressed by RM, 7 young men, assembled by one man, in a company that was barely keeping its lights on. On June 13, 2013, Bangtan Sonyeondan, BTS, made their stage debut on M Countdown with a song called No More Dream. It didn't sell particularly well. The media mostly ignored them. The big television stations and newspapers gave them little support. They were a hip-hop group from a small agency, in an industry dominated by polished, heavily manufactured pop. Nothing about their debut looked like the beginning of a revolution. But here's the thing that made BTS different from the very first day, and this is the secret that ARMY would later build an entire empire on: BTS was allowed to be real. Bang Si-hyuk gave his artists something almost unheard of in K-pop at the time: the freedom to write their own lyrics, to talk about their actual feelings, to address taboo topics like social pressure, mental health, and the anxiety of Korean youth. Their music wasn't just entertainment. It was a conversation. And some people, in small numbers at first, were listening very closely. Stay with me, because this is where the story gets interesting. Instead of relying on expensive television appearances and traditional media, Big Hit turned to something that the big agencies were still treating as secondary: social media and YouTube. BTS posted everything. Vlogs, dance practices, behind-the-scenes moments, funny clips, late-night recordings. They gave fans a window into their actual lives in a way that was almost radical for the K-pop industry. Fans began to gather, not just as passive listeners, but as participants. They translated videos into dozens of languages. They shared clips with friends. They stayed up all night to watch performances that aired at 3 a.m. in their time zones. By the time most of the industry noticed what was happening, BTS already had a global fanbase unlike anything K-pop had ever produced. The fandom called themselves ARMY, which stands for Adorable Representative MC for Youth. And just like the word suggests, they organized. Not loosely. Not casually. They built one of the most coordinated networks in the history of fan culture, spanning over 100 countries, speaking more than 46 languages, and covering an age range from 10 years old all the way to 80. By the most current estimates as of 2026, BTS has between 90 million and 136 million fans worldwide. Let that number sit with you for a moment. That is more than the entire population of Germany. more than the entire population of the Philippines. An army, in the most literal sense of the word. But what is the secret? What is the actual reason ARMY grew to this scale when so many other fandoms didn't? This is the part that academics and sociologists are still studying, and it comes down to something that a philosophy professor at Hankook University of Foreign Studies named Lee Ji-young put into words perfectly. She said that unlike traditional fandoms that operate as passive consumers, ARMY works in unison without a central authoritative figure. Nobody tells ARMY what to do. There is no official command structure. And yet, somehow, they move as one. The logic, Professor Lee explained, is deeply personal. If 7 young men from a small, struggling agency, singing in a language that most of the world doesn't speak, can become the biggest act on the planet, then maybe, just maybe, the person watching them can succeed at their dream too. ARMY didn't just love BTS. They saw themselves in BTS. And that is a bond that no amount of marketing can manufacture. The proof of what ARMY is capable of is not just in the streaming numbers. It is in what happened on June 7, 2020. In the middle of worldwide protests following the death of George Floyd in the United States, BTS and Big Hit Entertainment quietly donated $1 million to the Black Lives Matter movement. They said nothing publicly. And then, within hours of the news spreading, ARMY assembled on Twitter around a hashtag called #MatchAMillion. Within just over 24 hours, 35,609 donors had raised $1,026,531, matching BTS dollar for dollar, cent for cent. No celebrity told them to do it. No organization coordinated it. Fans from around the world, many of them young people with limited incomes, pooled their money and matched one of the largest celebrity donations in the history of the movement. Combined with the original BTS donation, over $2 million reached organizations fighting for racial justice in America, raised in less than 2 days, by a fandom that had organized itself. And this is not a one-time story. The fan-run charity group One in an Army has been organizing fundraisers since 2018, directing donations toward causes ranging from pediatric cancer to disaster relief to environmental protection. As of December 2025, BTS and ARMY together have raised approximately 9.2 billion Korean won, more than $6 million, for the Love Myself campaign alone, which was launched alongside UNICEF in 2017 to combat violence against children and youth. Over the past decade, there were nearly 2 billion mentions of BTS on social media. On Twitter alone, around 370 million tweets containing BTS hashtags were posted in a single year. These are not the numbers of a fan base. These are the numbers of a movement. Now here is something that might surprise you. For a period between 2022 and 2025, BTS went quiet. All 7 members, Jin, RM, Suga, jhope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, completed their mandatory military service under South Korean law, which requires able-bodied men to serve 18 to 21 months. Jin was the first to enlist, in December 2022. The final 5 members, RM, Jimin, V, Jungkook, and Suga, were discharged in June 2025. For nearly 3 years, BTS as a full group did not perform, did not release new music together, did not appear on stage side by side. And in that time, ARMY waited. They streamed old albums. They celebrated solo releases from each member. They organized birthday projects. They kept the numbers up. They kept the love alive. And when all 7 members reunited at jhope's solo farewell concert in June 2025, the first time the full group had stood on the same stage since 2022, the internet broke in the most beautiful way. Which brings us to right now. March 2026. BTS has announced their new studio album, titled Arirang, a name taken from one of Korea's most ancient folk songs, a melody that symbolizes identity, patience, separation, and reunion. The album is a 14-track project, the group's first full collective release since 2022's Proof. After their military discharges, all 7 members relocated to Los Angeles together, working on the album for months. RM described their schedule as 6 days a week, like businessmen, mornings for physical training, afternoons and evenings in the studio. And the Arirang World Tour, which kicks off on April 9, 2026, in Goyang, South Korea, is set to run for over 82 dates across 34 cities in 23 countries, all the way through 2027. Tickets sold out within hours of going on sale. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, publicly acknowledged that approximately 1 million young Mexicans were trying to buy tickets for BTS concerts, far exceeding the available seats. The president of Mexico, talking about a K-pop group's ticket demand. That is ARMY. So what is the secret? After everything, after the near bankruptcy, the ignored debut, the years of building through social media, the charity campaigns, the military hiatus, the sold-out stadiums, the president of Mexico, what is the actual secret of ARMY? It is this: BTS never pretended to be something they were not. They wrote songs about real anxiety, real failure, real heartbreak. They posted their actual faces on bad days and good ones. They told their fans directly, love yourself. And ARMY heard that message, believed it, and handed it back to the world 100 million times over. The relationship between BTS and ARMY is not the relationship between celebrities and fans. It is closer to the relationship between a band of brothers and the people who grew up alongside them, sharing the same fears, the same hopes, the same desperate desire to prove that where you start does not determine where you end up. From 4 employees and a near-bankrupt agency in 2007 to the most powerful fandom in music history. From a debut that nobody noticed to sold-out stadiums on every continent. From 7 boys in a small room in Seoul to 100 million people around the world who call themselves ARMY. That is not luck. That is not a formula. That is something rarer and more dangerous than both. It is truth. And the world, it turns out, has been starving for it. If this story moved you, if you felt even a fraction of what ARMY feels, please give this video a like right now. It genuinely helps more people find stories like this. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep telling the stories behind the music that actually matters. Drop a comment below. Are you part of ARMY? Which era of BTS first got you? I want to know. And if you have a friend who's never understood why ARMY is the way they are, share this video with them. Let them hear it from the beginning. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Purple You. Annyeong.